Hi everyone, this is Maria. I'm joining you from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. I'm sitting in a graveyard actually. And it seemed like an appropriate place to continue this story. It's still winter here. It's April 9th, but that doesn't seem to matter in Canada. It was snowing this morning and it's still cold out and still definitely winter. And we're all getting a little bit sick of it, and so I thought I'd better continue telling the story because it's really a story about spring. So Persephone has been taken by Hades down into the dark depths of the underworld, the netherworld, the world of shadow, the world of death, the world of illusion that exists alongside our world and yet is separate from it. And this is a place that is foreign to Persephone. She is used to big expanses of sky, of picking mushrooms out in the fields, of feeding baby fawns out of her hands. She is not used to the land of nightmares where the shadows walk from door to door, where people do not call each other by name, where nobody looks each other in the eye. This is the underworld. And no matter what, she knows she needs to get out of there. And she knows in order to do this, she must not eat anything, because the one way that you remain stuck in the underworld is by eating the fruit of the underworld. And Hades knows this as well. And so he tries to tempt Persephone. And he brings her the best delicacies of his realm. He brings her jewel bright strawberries that look like rubies, and dark red cherries that are growing underground and tended by the goblins. And he brings her big ripe watermelons that grow down in the lava caves deep at the heart of the world. And he stretches out before her and he slowly begins to eat a strawberry, and he says, "Well, Persephone, would you like to join me? Are you not feeling hungry? Are you not feeling lonely?" And Persephone says, "I will never eat your food. I will never join you. I am not of this world, and I refuse to become one of you." And Hades just smiles and says, "As you wish. We'll see." This goes on for some time. And Persephone notices that she's the only one that does not eat the fruit of the underworld. Everyone else seems to eat it. They seem to need it. They seem to actually exist off of it somehow. And if they don't get enough of it, they become angry and weak. And she begins to wonder what is in this fruit. Still, she resists, but as time goes on, she grows tired, she grows weary, she grows cold and lonely, and it seems like there is no light or hope in this place of darkness. And one day she's out walking, and she happens to wander under this tree, and it's laden with these dark red fruit, and one just falls serendipitously right in front of her, and she picks it up and she looks at it. It's smooth and ripe and delicious, and she looks to the right and to the left and forward and behind her. She doesn't see anyone. So quickly she opens the fruit, and these red seeds spill out onto the snow. Quickly, she eats one. And suddenly, it feels like her bones get warmer. It feels like light is spreading through her veins. She doesn't feel so lonely and afraid anymore. And so she eats another one, and oh, it's like a relief. It's like the pain is leaving. It's so good. And she eats another and another and another, and it's like the fruit of oblivion. Suddenly she doesn't even feel like she's in the underworld. She feels like she's somewhere safe and warm again, and she eats one more seed, and then Hades jumps out of the top branches of the tree with a clap of thunder and a ringing of iron. And he picks her up as if she weighed nothing, and he pushes her against the tree, and he says, "Do you like it? The fruit of the underworld? I'm so glad you finally partaken, Persephone, because you know what this means? This means you're mine forever." And he laughs. Well, I don't know if you've ever had a moment like that. I'm sure I have, where you've done something and you weren't quite sure if it was a good idea, but you did it anyway, and suddenly you can't go back. You realize you made a mistake, but you can't undo what you just did. And that's the position that Persephone finds herself in. She has eaten the forbidden fruit, and she has, by the laws of the underworld, now she is owned by the underworld. Now she is owned by Hades. And that's not something you necessarily want to happen. But what can she do? What can you do at that point? It's already happened. You've already signed your name in blood. The contract has been made, and there's no going back at this point. So when we come to those places in our lives, I've realized that we really only have two choices at that point, and it's whether we can feel sorry for ourselves and regret our decision and spend all of our time thinking about the past and wishing things were different, or we can make the best of the situation that we now find ourselves in. And that is eventually what Persephone did. She realized, you know what, nobody's coming to rescue me. Nobody has found me. Hades is not going to let me go. I don't know how to get out of here on my own. And it looks like this is my fate. And so instead of fighting it, I'm going to make the best of this situation. And I'm going to do the best that I can to learn as much as I can about the underworld and be the best person I can inside of this situation. You know, I'm in prison, so I might as well I might as well accept that and do what I can here. And so she does. She starts to get to know Hades, and she does end up, they do end up marrying, and she does end up becoming the queen of the underworld. And she accompanies him on his missions throughout that land. And he teaches her the ways of the underworld. And she explores that land, and she gets to know the people down there, and the ghosts and the shadows and the goblins and the demons. And she gets to understand that place, and she actually becomes a guide for those who are sent down to the underworld. She shows them the way. She's kind of like the light that shows the way in those dark places. And so she finds a purpose within her new fate, you know, once she stops fighting it and once she accepts it. And but while all this is going on, something else has been happening as well. You know, Persephone doesn't think that anyone is coming for her. She doesn't think anyone cares that she's disappeared. But she's actually wrong. There is one person who has noticed her disappearance and who is very troubled by that. And that person is her mother, Demeter, the goddess of the harvest. Demeter is like nature in full bloom. She is the one you see with like the sheaf of wheat in her arms, and she's often pregnant, and she has children around her, and there's a cornucopia of food and music and laughter. She is the goddess of abundance. And she misses her daughter, that ray of light, and she decides she's gonna do whatever it takes to get her back. So she sets off on a mission, you know, and she puts up posters everywhere, you know, missing person, Persephone, and she asks everyone, you know, have you seen her? She understands that the other gods and the goddesses and the mortals, and no one's necessarily going to do what she needs them to do. She has to make this happen. If she wants to find her missing daughter, she's got to find her. And so she does, and she crosses mountains and rivers, and she walks through forests, and she crosses deserts, and she rides camels, and she gets to know the Bedouin and the different tribes, and she goes all over the earth, you know. And some people don't help her, and they laugh in her face, and she has to sleep under bridges, but other people do help her, never realizing who she is, you know, the goddess of nature and the goddess of abundance. And she remembers the ones that helped her, and later on she pays them back, you know. It's interesting when strangers come to our door looking for help. You know, we never know who they really are. Maybe that's a goddess in disguise. Anyway, the problem is she is not having much luck on her search. And nobody seems to know what has happened to Persephone, and so she starts to get discouraged. And when Demeter gets discouraged, that's not necessarily a good thing, because she stops doing her duties and things start to die. And they did. The rivers started to shrivel up and stop flowing, and the lakes started to dry up, and the fruit shriveled on the branches, and there were no grapes to make wine. The animals started to die for lack of food, and the harvests were ruined by bad weather. Slowly, the entire land, almost as if a curse has been placed on it, starts to die. Now, Zeus, who was never so worried about the disappearance of Persephone, does start to get worried about what is happening to the land, because people are coming to him and complaining. And so he sends out messages to all his friends asking what the cause could be of this sudden decay and death and sickness that is going over everything. And Helios, the wise sun god, he gets back to Zeus and he says, you know, I think this might have something to do with your daughter and her disappearance. And you never heard it from me, but I did happen to see what went on. And I hate to tell you, but it was actually your brother Hades that kidnapped her. Yikes. So Hades and Zeus may be brothers, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they owe each other anything. And Zeus doesn't want to just head down to the underworld and demand Persephone back, because that could instigate a war. And so, for the time being, he doesn't do anything. However, finally Demeter has found some information, and she realizes as well, through somebody that told somebody that heard it from Helios, that Persephone has been taken by Hades. And so she rushes back to her husband, back to Zeus, and she demands that he go down and bargain for the return of Persephone. She says, we must get Persephone back. And then she starts to realize that Zeus already had this information and he hasn't done anything with it. And Demeter is pretty pissed off, like, you knew our daughter was kidnapped and you didn't do anything? Yeah, that's not so cool. So she says, Zeus, you better fix this or else I'm not going to start helping the land to reflourish and I'm just going to let everything die and you are going to be in some serious trouble. And Zeus recognizes that, yeah, that might not be so great. So he contacts his friend Hermes, the messenger god, and he says, Hermes, I need you to go and talk to Hades, and we need to get Persephone back. So Hermes goes down to the underworld. He has these cool winged sandals that allow him to travel, between the worlds. And so he sends messages between the gods, and he comes down and he's allowed to enter as the messenger god into the underworld. And he says, hey, yeah, Hades, we have a little bit of a problem. Zeus is not so happy that you kidnapped his daughter, and he's demanding that she be released. And Hades says, oh, well, isn't that interesting? I really wish I could give her back, but she's eaten the fruit of the underworld, and you know the laws. I mean, not much I can do about it. So Hermes says, okay, but I don't think Zeus is going to be too happy about this. And he heads back up and he tells Zeus the news. Well, Zeus is not so happy, and he calls a council of the gods, and he demands that Hades come, and there's a court, and there's a trial, and they have to figure out what to do. And so Demeter says her piece, and Zeus says his piece, and Helios says his piece, and in the end it's decided that, you know what, Persephone did eat the fruit of the underworld. However, she only ate 6 seeds of the pomegranate. I mean, she didn't even eat one whole fruit. She just tasted it. And so it's decided that she will stay with Hades for 6 months of every year, for half of time, for half of her life, for half of the seasons, and for the other half, she will return to the upper world. So, I want to tell you a secret about the underworld. There is a mountain in the underworld, and it is so tall that it reaches all the way up to the crust of the earth. And if you climb that mountain on the right day, and you happen to be the right person, and the moon is exactly where it needs to be, and the stars are aligned, sometimes an opening will occur between the lower world and the upper world, and you can pass back through and up into the world of life. So Persephone knows about this because, don't forget, She is the queen of the underworld, and she has spent all of her time there learning the ways of the underworld. And now that she is free to be released, she sets off for this mountain, and she climbs it all the way up to its very peak. And as soon as she gets to the top, she takes her hand and she reaches it all the way up and touches the crust of the earth. And Persephone has lightning in her veins because, don't forget, she is the daughter of Zeus. And she uses that lightning to crack open the earth, and the earth splits open. A huge, gigantic split in the earth opens up. And Persephone is able to crawl back up and get back up into the upper world. Yay! And she is so overjoyed that she starts to skip and run and sing and laugh and dance, and the animals come out to play with her, and the humans start to come, and soon the gods hear about it. And her mother hears about it, and she comes and she's reunited with Persephone. And that is one of the greatest reunions that we know in myth. It is a beautiful and joyous celebration where there is rose-colored wine, and there's beautiful pears and fruits, and there's minstrels with flutes, and there's storytelling and singing. And Demeter reverses the curse on the land, and she makes everything blossom again, even more beautifully than it had before. And the earth is restored to beauty, harmony, light, truth, and joy. And this is the story of the return of Persephone. This is the story of the return of spring, of the return to the homeland. As we all come back from our great and epic journey away into darkness, we all must come back eventually into the light of our own truth. And we choose to do this collectively as an earth over and over again. It's the circle and the story of life. And we are at that time right now when we shall soon be journeying back to our true home, you guys. So this is a story of hope, of things to come this year, and in the following years, it's just going to get better. So hang in there, and yeah. Get ready. Persephone is coming back, and everything is going to be restored to a way that we have not seen for a long time. And we're all a part of this process. We're all equally important in this process. So it's really great that we're all on this journey together. All right.